Amused or bemused? Lockdown has been eventful. Eventually. The Mad About podcast. This is a show where we will be discussing mental health recovery, neurodiversity and creativity. Thanks so much for coming along. Every show will start off with a piece of creative writing by one of our listeners, and the haiku that you heard today was by Louise. Thanks so much, Louise. We really love it. Amused and bemused indeed. We're your hosts, Sadie P.
And I'm Catty G. We both have lived experience of mental health issues and or neurodiverse conditions and are massive fans of art, music, theatre and all things creative, as well as nurturing our own creative practices.
We will be interviewing outside artists mostly on the show, talking about mental health and creativity and looking a little bit deeper at where these things intersect.
Every week we'll be taking on a different topic. This week we're...
Lockdown! Yeah, so we couldn't really do a show about mental health without not including a lockdown episode. It's had such a massive impact on all of us over the past year, and it has a massive impact on people's mental health, and it's really changed our lives. Because we kind of met through lockdown and the kind of things that came out of it.
Exactly. Neither of us would not be here. Well, you would still be here if this hadn't happened, but not without lockdown.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have
done
a podcast if it wasn't for lockdown.
No,
because
no way.
It's kind of thinking about ways to be creative and put it out to audiences in socially distant ways, and everything is happening through the computer screen these days.
For sure.
Yeah, so I feel like there's been creativity that's come from it because of the restrictions that have been added on. So people have been thinking of new ways to do their art and new ways to socialise with their friends.
Yeah, personally, I mean, I wouldn't be like doing what I'm doing with all sort of music and dance stuff if it hadn't been for lockdown. I'm obviously have sort of privilege in order that it allowed me to give me a bit of time to have creative pursuits and stuff that I didn't necessarily have time for before. So,
and for me as well, I was furloughed and had all this time and started doing my art again.
But I think there's also been a thing of I think it's maybe made it slightly more obvious how much we completely idolise and glorify busyness and progress, and it becomes kind of absurd when there's nothing really that anyone can do every day. And it's yes, I've baked banana bread, or yes, I've, achieved this thing. And it's just like us, the sort of human being trying to cling on to these small victories or signs that we're still productive human beings or whatever.
Is the banana bread thing still happening? Because I thought that was there were all of these fads that happened at the beginning. People were making sourdough bread, banana bread. I did it. I did a banana bread. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. I did a banana bread too. My sister did the sourdough. She didn't do the sourdough. She started making the sourdough starter, and it was just months of stinky, mouldy flour everywhere, and it never became a sourdough. So.
Oh yeah, we had a sourdough, a SCOBY come at.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And my housemate at the time managed to kill it.
Baby
I don't know how you do it. Yeah, because you're supposed to keep feeding it and you have to keep it up. It's like
you cannot neglect the flour, baby.
Little poor SCOBY died. Yeah, I remember right at the beginning when lockdown first happened, I was kind of in a bit of a panic, really. Well, everybody was. It was like this manic kind of period of make to amends, dig for... Yeah. It felt like World War II. Like the first thing I started doing was growing veg, because I just felt like all of the shops were going to stop.
Dig for Britain.
Dig for victory. Yeah, I felt like I needed to prepare for the apocalypse, for all the shops closing down. So I started getting really into gardening, and I loved it, actually. It was so therapeutic. So I'm wondering about habits that our friends have got into that are really productive. And I'm wondering, Katy, is there anything that your friends are doing that seem really productive that you're just not doing and you feel a bit guilty about, perhaps?
Well, the main thing that my friends are doing are all producing little versions of themselves and all having families and like... Yeah, a lot of them are having children, and I'm obviously really happy for them. But that there's definitely an element of, if you are a sort of single woman in your somewhat mid to late 30s, that you're sort of sitting out the last of your childbearing years in a, chained up in your house and not able to leave. And so that's been, like, in a way, quite an interesting thing to be having to go through, if having children is something that obviously you want to do.
Do you know?
It probably is.
Do you know what? I hadn't even thought of that, and I am in that bracket.
But I mean, maybe your friends aren't quite so actively popping them out as mine are. But yeah, it's been intense. Like probably 5 or 6 of my closest friends have had babies during lockdown.
There are a couple of people that I know. One of my closest friends is having a baby quite soon, actually. So, talking about lockdown and habits that people have got into, I was talking about this with a friend on the phone the other day, and she was saying that she's now up to running 8K. She's got a personal trainer. She's training for a 10K run, and she's kind of really, really fit. It made me feel a bit inadequate, because the only progress that I've made is that I'm now having the big chocolate bars, not the normal size, and then there's the big
upgrade, and
then there's the big. I'm now eating the big in one sitting. That's my progress.
My progress is that I installed the Couch to 5K app, which I think is a big step in the right direction.
Oh, I did that. Yeah, but
I'm not yet done any of it.
It's really good. Maybe we should do it together and report our progress back on the show.
We can. Still on week 1.
Well, maybe we could motivate each other. That helps.
Yeah, it's really useful, and you can also hold me accountable. So that
I've done it.
Lazy.
I've done it before, actually, about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was really good. Mm-hmm. Although I did get a ligament injury when I started to then train for the 10K. Just pushed it too far. But I'm much more in tune with my body these days.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Couch 5K is an amazing thing.
Yeah, I'd be up for that. Should we do it?
Yeah, we should. Okay,
let's do a virtual.
We'll like it.
Let's do.
Should we start week 1 right now?
Okay. Yeah. So when we get off here, we'll go and do.
Out we go.
Can we do a high five through Zoom?
Yeah.
That's the deal.
But I'm not going to start today, though.
Okay, Katy.
We've got a dance party to organise later.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about how we met as well. Since it's a lockdown show, we actually met through a lockdown arranged music night through Zoom.
Which is weird, because it feels like definitely I've met you many times in person, because we've been hanging out for like a year every Friday on Zoom, more or less.
Yeah, we've been hanging out for a year now, virtually.
Yeah.
And Katy is the DJ and the organizer of the event.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm the organizer of the event initially, but then I think it sort of took on its own life and gathered its own momentum. And the music, I would say, is sort of crowdsourced, more or less, which is actually something I really love about it, because you learn so much new music, and you know, it's not like one person dictating the music to everyone. Sort of everyone gets a say, which is my favourite thing about it, really. So yeah,
I really love it. What's the name of the link that we use to so how it works is everybody finds music through YouTube, and then puts a link onto
SyncTube.
SyncTube, and then it takes off the adverts, and everybody can kind of line up songs and create a playlist.
Yeah,
it's really great.
It's like a collaborative online dance party, basically.
It was really motivating, especially towards the beginning of lockdown when it was all so novelty and new and nothing was happening. I began to become really inspired to kind of find out about new music and come prepared with little set lists.
My one weekly task was make sure I've got tunes for Friday.
Yeah, we're having one tonight actually.
Yeah. Which is why I can't start my couch to 5K today.
But actually, when I say tonight, I mean in the past.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because it would have already have gone.
Yeah. We're having it last Friday.
So we've talked quite a bit so far about our own experiences of lockdown, but I think it's important to acknowledge that everybody has had such a different experience depending on their situation. I know I was reading in an article about the amount of NHS staff that are now suffering with PTSD because of the pandemic and because of the conditions that they've had to work under. And not to mention the people who have survived COVID and who have also got PTSD from waking up attached to a ventilator and not knowing what's going on. And also people who aren't privileged enough to own a laptop or a phone or have a Netflix account, all of these kind of things that a lot of us take for granted. And another difficult thing to come out of this is that some people have lost loved ones and they've not been able to visit them. That kind of adds a whole new layer of complexity to the grieving process.
Yeah, there's no we don't have any kind of history for this kind of grieving before. It's totally kind of new territory for us, isn't it?
Yeah, thankfully I haven't lost anybody close to me, but I can't even imagine what that's like.
No.
On top of the loss of jobs and the uncertainty about the future, lots of people are suffering with mental health problems now when they didn't before.
Yeah. At the beginning of the pandemic, I remember people were talking about it as the sort of quote unquote the great equalizer. And actually, it's been the great revealer of inequality more than the great equalizer, because we've seen how it's like definitely the most vulnerable who have been the most affected by it, and the ones who are somehow bubbled by their wealth or their privilege or whatever, they're having a very different lockdown to the rest of us.
Yeah.
While we've been hiding away in our houses for the best part of a year, there's been a different thing going on for different people.
Yeah, that's right. I was just wanting to add into what you were talking about with inequality, and I think perhaps one of the positive impacts to come out of COVID is that it has highlighted that there is still massive racism.
Exactly.
And inequality. Also, I just wanted to talk a little bit about mental health services as well, because they have been hugely impacted by the pandemic, and they've been chronically underfunded for 10 years and were in a crisis before the pandemic even hit. So now it must just be absolute chaos.
Completely overwhelmed, yeah. The other part of that article that I thought was interesting was at the very end, when it was saying, yes, we've got a problem now with people having way more mental health issues than they used to have, but we're also going to have a problem when it comes to reintegrating afterwards, when this is all over. That actually, if you've spent so long feeling like people are unsafe and that you have to isolate, that to like recondition ourselves into, okay, it's okay to be in a crowd. For people with anxiety or anything like that, like, I already have anxiety dreams about being in crowds and being worried about people having COVID all around me and stuff. And I think there's going to be an element of that will play out in real life when this is over.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to have to be reintegrated when all this is over, because I feel like I've gone past the point of being socially acceptable. And I feel like I was clutching at straws to begin with, and it was really hard for me to, control my farts in public, that kind of thing. I've lost that control. I don't know if I can do it anymore. But no, on a more serious note, it's so individual, like how somebody's experience of the pandemic has happened is so unique to their individual experience, because I got it back in March. So that kind of anxiety about getting it wasn't there for me.
I think also one of the things that massively gives me anxiety about the whole thing is the thing of giving it to other people. Having sort of vulnerable parents that I've had to shield and so on. There's a sort of, you become very aware of like the responsibility of just you going around and doing things, and I think it can be a cause for anxiety.
Yeah, I was wondering, another thing I was wondering about is if perhaps the pandemic and lockdown and the massive rise in mental health crisis and the amount of people talking about it now might actually help to improve the mental health services for people, with more funding and more recognition that mental health issues are a real thing, and it's a bit of a disease of our modern
times.
Day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that one of the problems with things like mental health issues like depression is that they're concatenated by societal shame about them. And so if we could start to be having more open conversations, that would immediately make just having the condition itself a little bit easier, if you weren't also like, oh no, I should feel shameful and private about this.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking about the amount of people who perhaps suffered with mental health problems before but didn't say anything about it at work, but now feel that they can talk about it at work.
Yeah.
Because other people are talking about it. And I think workplaces are a big part of where change happens, because they're like these
huge institutions,
huge cultures.
Yeah.
And it's where people spend most of their time. And
it's become more acceptable within a workplace to say, I'm actually not really okay, because we have the excuse of there being a huge pandemic. And so you can be like, I'm not okay. And that's a bit more acceptable than it used to be than in normal life.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason.
Even in workplaces that I've worked in over the past 10 years or so, I've found massive variation. I've had quite a few different jobs. One of the things that I found that was quite ironic after working for the mental health services, when staff wouldn't talk about their own mental health, but would talk about the mental health of the service users, but would be expected to be kind of machines that didn't have emotions or mental health themselves. I then stopped that job and then went to work in a big office, and there was a huge culture of talking about mental health, talking about it with managers, asking somebody if they're okay, posters everywhere from Time to Change, the campaign to do with breaking the stigma about mental health. And I just thought that it was great and so ironic, because I worked for the mental health services before that, and I was just burnt out. Yeah, crazy.
So lockdown in many ways has been like quite a sort of a positive thing for you then, has it?
Doing the interview with you later, so I can talk a little bit more about it then. But I guess just to say a little bit about it now is that my needs are a bit different to most people. And in fact, the situation that I was in before was actually really damaging to my mental health, because I was surrounded by lots of people in an office all day, every day. And taking that away and being able to have my own space has just been actually allowed me to thrive a little bit, because I've been able to save my energy, and I don't thrive in an office around lots of people.
So it's taken away that harmful work environment, which must be a huge relief on every level.
Yeah.
I always hated an office environment as well.
Yeah, a lot of workplaces will make reasonable adjustments, but when it comes to the extent that is actually needed to make a difference to my quality of life. It's just not possible in
They're not
a
doing
lot of
nearly
workplaces.
enough.
And I think perhaps now another good thing to come out of lockdown would be that a lot of people were able to work from home. Like a lot of people that weren't able to work from home before, suddenly overnight the companies made it possible within the space of a week for everybody to do remote working.
That was convenient, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Even the commute can be very like a sensory overload, huge stressor for lots of people.
I was reading about people who are working from home now doing fake commutes, and I guess like if you're, I think it's a really good idea. I've been trying to do it for months, but I just haven't been able to get the motivation to do it. So I'm wondering if maybe I could slot in a couch to 5K run.
So the idea is you wake up and get ready, and then you go out of your house for a walk as though you're going to work, and then you come back to your house and work.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be very good for your well-being, and I can see why.
But could it not be that just that it's the walk that's good for us, not necessarily the sort of rat-like commute to work?
Oh yeah. You don't have to. You don't have to go on a tube or anything.
Or imagine you're going to the office. Heaven
No.
forbid.
It's just a case of like getting outside, moving, and rather than just like getting up, getting a cup of tea, sitting down, just
in my
getting
pajamas all day.
Body moving. Yeah.
It's true. It gives you like a deadline to sort of start your day from in a way. But
And
I'm lacking.
It's a habit as well. Perhaps like a habit to like jump up, brush teeth, eat breakfast, get out the house. Because I used to do all those things. Now my dental hygiene is very poor.
Yeah. Who's been to the dentist in the last 9 months? No, nobody.
Yeah, dentists. Oh, yeah, let's not go there. Okay, so this brings us on to our next segment, which will be an interactive feature, and it's called the
Means Well.
So basically, every show, we're going to be asking you guys for suggestions to go into the Means Well. This week, we're going to start off with Catty and myself. We've got a couple of suggestions to put down. And what we're looking for is basically any advice that we've received from somebody who meant well, but it perhaps didn't help and wasn't what we needed at the time. So we're going to pop it into the Means Well and take out of it something that would have been more helpful instead. So to kick us off, Catty G, over to you. Have you got a suggestion for the Means Well? Something that somebody said to you in the past that wasn't helpful for you, perhaps?
Yeah, something that's been not useful recently has been if I've been talking to somebody and been brave enough to say to somebody, I'm not having a very good day today, or things don't look so great today, and they've just said, oh, just look on the bright side, try to focus on the positive things, don't dwell on the hard things.
No, focus on the positives.
Yeah, focus on the positives. That can go down into the Means Well as a well-meaning but not very helpful.
Okay, yeah. So we've got don't think about anything negative, only think about the positive. That's
exactly it. Yeah, that's not a
Okay,
helpful.
yeah.
That's not a helpful thing for me.
That sounds really unhelpful, and I've actually had people say that to me in the past as well. And when you're kind of stuck in a deep dark hole, it makes you feel like actually you're not allowed to have those feelings.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Down it goes.
first of all, this is the very first one. So you're privileged right now. You're the very first person to try out.
The Means Well.
How does it feel?
It feels like we're breaking new territory here. This could be the start of something big.
Yeah, I feel like that as well. And the Means Well is looking hungry.
It is. It needs some unhelpful advice to turn into diamonds.
We have to throw that piece of advice with our voice down into the well.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's see what what the well's got for us. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay.
So well, this is for you. The first piece of unhelpful advice is just think positive.
Oh, I could hear it. It's echoing in the distance.
Down it goes.
Go on. Plonk.
Plonk indeed.
I heard a plonk. I think it's gone. So means well works fast. So do you want to try taking the handle and
Okay.
cranking it up?
I'm
crank up the
grasping on.
bucket.
Here we go. I'm turning. Up it comes.
Going like, oh, there it is. I can see it. Can you grab it?
Yep, here we go. I'm just opening it out. Okay, I can read it.
Oh, the means well has given a couple of different suggestions there.
So a couple of ways that it suggests that we could give a more helpful response than just think positive. A few things we could say are, it's okay not to be okay. I acknowledge that you're having a hard time and I'm here for you.
That sounds a lot more validating.
Yes, rather than toxically positive.
There seems to be quite a lot of focus on only positives, and I think that can be quite damaging, really. And I know that we all obviously want to feel happy and positive, and we don't want to feel sad and angry and all of those things, but it's not really how it works.
No, it's part of the human condition, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't just say, just don't have that emotion. Think like this, because you have to just go through it.
And all that does is make you think you're in some way deficient because you've had that thought. So it just adds to the problems that you were already having.
And also, I think it helps to keep you stuck because it adds on an extra layer of shame. Giving yourself a hard time because you're having a negative emotion and it's not allowed.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Totally agree.
great. That's a great start to the show. Thank you, Means Well. I think the Means Well is a wise beast, but also the Means Well is tuned into our individual contributor, because a piece of advice for one person might be very helpful, but for another person it might not. So just to make that clear as well. Shall we do one more?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, you do yours. Yeah. What's next to go down the Means Well, Sadie?
So I'm gonna do one, and it's based on sort of quite a lot of pieces of advice that I've received in the past from various people who are convinced that what works for them will also work for me. So it's more of a generic kind of suggestion here. It's what I want to put down the Means Well is, you need to try this thing. It will definitely work for you. And those things could be various. That could be the kind of advice that I've received in the past has been people telling me that I definitely need to take hormones because that sorted them right out.
That's definitely the answer.
I definitely need to do CBT. Definitely. CBD, the CBD oil. So definitely going to sort you right out. Everything you need. Everything
It's the answer
you need.
to all of your problems.
Everything. From sciatica to bipolar, mood disorder, everything. I found that quite difficult because obviously everybody's different, and if something works for them, it's not definitely going to work for me. So I'm going to chuck it in.
Okay, let's put it in there.
You need to try this thing. It'll definitely work for you. Okay, see you later. Right, okay, I'm going to bring it back up. I know what to do. I've seen you do it.
Do it.
I know what to do. Oh, I can see it. That's a bit wet.
What does it say?
So it means Well's got a different suggestion here. What it says is, I tried this thing, whatever it is, and it worked for me. It might work for you, but you won't know until you try, because we're all different.
exactly. That's a much more helpful thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
And suggesting like a one size fits all. I understand the thing of like, if you've tried something that's been really amazing for you, you don't want other people to miss out on the secret, but at the same time it sort of denies the differences between different people and can be a little bit like infantilizing.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of doing it myself in the past as well.
Same.
And I think it comes from a place of obviously well-meaning, but also kind of perhaps a not having a full understanding of the different types of people that exist in the world.
Yeah, and how complex it can be.
Yeah, I mean, for example, someone who, like myself, who is neurodiverse can try out a lot of things that would work for a neurotypical person, but because of a different functioning brain, won't work in the same way.
Yeah.
So it's individual. So great. Yeah. Thank you. Means well.
Thank you for serving us, Means well.
We'll feed you again next time.
Now on to the interview segment of the show. This week we're talking to Sadie P, or Sadie Phew, as she's also known. She's my co-host on the show, my friend, and an artist who experiments with abstract expressionist collage with therapeutic aspects. And she's also done recently some performance art around COVID, which maybe we can talk about in a little bit.
Sure.
So how's lockdown been for you then, Sadie?
Yeah, it's been great. No, that's a joke. Loads of people have been saying that. Like, how's your lockdown been? And they're like, oh yeah, great. But yeah, it's been quite interesting so far.
Can you tell us a little more about your own mental health recovery journey?
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of why we're here, isn't it? To talk about our mental health recovery journeys. I'm going to be honest and say this is really vulnerable.
You can do it.
But so I have struggled most of my life with my mental health in various ways. I'm not going to go too much into the details, but I haven't had an easy upbringing. Haven't had a lot of support. And I've had quite a lot of trauma in my life. And I guess I wasn't really aware that I had any major issues until I got into my mid-20s. I guess I always really kind of excelled at school and college and uni. So I guess I wasn't really aware of having any big issues at those times. And perhaps had quite a few unhealthy coping mechanisms as well. But I think my issues really became apparent around my mid-20s when it was kind of like, okay, now I have to work full time and I have to support myself to do the sort of functional things to kind of be independent that a lot of my friends seem to be doing. So I've been trying to get support for mental health services since my mid-20s. Which is about 12 years. Yeah, so where I'm at now is, I mean, I've had many times where I've thought that I'm cured now because I've done a course with CBT. Oh, I've been meditating continuously for 10 days. It's sorted everything out. I'm cured now. So I've had so many false starts, and I've worked as a peer support worker, and I thought that I was in a good place at that time, and I wasn't, because I was doing CBT, and actually that wasn't ideal for me. And I didn't know that at the time, but I was just doing everything that I was told to do by the mental health service and people that I had advising me, which wasn't really that many people. It wasn't really right for me. And
So where are you at now in your recovery? Have you had any real breakthrough moments with it so far?
Yeah, so I've had really big breakthrough actually quite recently, which has really enabled me to make huge progress in my mental health recovery. by realizing that I'm actually not a neurotypical person, and a lot of the things that I was trying and being told to do were more relevant for neurotypical people than for someone like me who is most likely autistic. And it's actually been missed throughout my childhood and throughout most of my adult life that I am a disabled person, and I've been really struggling with situations, people, generally things that most other people find quite easy and most people really enjoy has been really difficult for me. And it's been massive. It kind of feels a bit like coming out. My whole life makes sense in the context of having a neurodevelopmental condition. And I've been able to put things in place in my life and make adaptations and really limit my contact with certain people, most people actually, and be able to save my energy and not get so burnt out by things. It makes a lot of sense. And I'm actually a disabled person.
Gosh, it must have been quite something to find this out. So, not so late in your life, but later on in life. How's it been for you?
Yeah, it's been massive actually. I won't go into too much detail about the huge emotional roller coaster that it's been, but I've actually kind of discovered that it's really common in women that it's missed. Autism in particularly in women presents differently to in men, and the whole diagnostic manual is based on men. So there are so many women who are finding this out in their 40s, 50s and 60s. So really, it's probably an early diagnosis in the grand scheme of things.
I suppose it's comforting to know you're not alone, but not really comforting, but to know that so many people have been, misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all.
Yeah, I went through a stage of feeling really angry about it. But there's pros and cons to it as well. I've probably done quite a lot of things in my life that I wouldn't have done if I'd have known. But also there's things that I've done in my life that have put me in a really vulnerable situation, and I could have avoided that if I had have known.
Well, thank you for sharing. Should we go on to talk a little bit specifically about our theme, lockdown?
Yeah.
How has it really been for you?
Yeah.
And what effect has it had on your creative practice?
Well, yeah, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but on the whole, for me personally, it has been positive. Lots of things have come out of it. Lots of changes have happened. I guess if it wasn't for lockdown, it might not have become apparent for me that I am a little bit different to a lot of people. And yeah, I was working in a job that I didn't like, and it was just 9 to 5 grind, and it's allowed me to stop that and to just reset and focus.
So it sounds like your life really changed a lot due to lockdown in many ways, and mostly for the better, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You got rid of a job that was grinding you down. You started your arts practice again. You got a new job you love. Can you tell us a little bit more about the creative stuff you've been getting up to in your creative practice?
Yeah, so I guess before lockdown happened, my creative practice was just non-existent, basically. I was just in recovery from a massive amount of trauma, actually PTSD. From a really traumatic, prolonged situation. I didn't have any space.
And would you say your creativity is linked with your mental health recovery?
Yes, I guess my artwork always has been kind of linked with my mental health recovery, really. I think with my creative work, in my visual work in particular, I do some kind of performance work as well, but I call myself a visual artist, really. I think at the times in my life where I've been really depressed and really stuck, I've been blocked. I've not been creating anything at all. So, yeah, I guess over the lockdown, when I was furloughed, I had space. Me and a good friend of mine started up an art night on Zoom every week, and that just really kick-started me. And with my friend who I do the artwork with, she's really amazing, and everyone goes through the same struggles of, with the inner critic and feeling like the work that you're doing isn't that good, and having to kind of get past that and allow it to be crap. So yeah, it's really a practice. Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a meditation practice, but I've really been enjoying it since lockdown began, and decided that I would put a bit more energy into it and focus on it a bit more. Made a new website, started to kind of do commissions for people. I'm really into the idea of collaborating with people, but thinking about how to collaborate with lockdown and not having contact. So I've been posting rolls of canvases to people and asking them to post them back to me, and then I stretch the canvas and kind of go over the top with my style, which is kind of abstract expressionist and collage and colourful and layers. I guess, yeah. And I found that having the restrictions of lockdown made me kind of start to think about ways to get around it. And a performing buddy and I did some street performances over the summer as well, because we thought that's, a way to get around the fact that all of the theatres are closed. So we kind of thought that we'd try and bring it out to people, and we were playing in parks.
Oh, yeah, I missed out on seeing those performances in person because of the pandemic, but I saw photos of you dressed in a wonderful red outfit. What were those performances all about then?
They were ridiculous. For anybody who doesn't know, I was dressed up as COVID-19, which is probably a little bit controversial, but hey-ho.
Let's talk about how do you think that being neurodiverse has an effect on how your art is received by neurotypical people or the mainstream art world?
I think my work is probably an acquired taste, because it can be quite messy and probably a bit kind of grim. Or what's the word I'm trying to go for?
It's quite there's something quite real about it.
I think it could probably be quite intense, probably quite sort of maybe even a bit violent. And I've had a feeling for quite a long time that my work isn't really the same as most other people. A lot of people like nice artwork that can go on the wall, that's like a watercolor and it's a cottage or a dog or something, and
vanilla and beige.
I've never been into that. I was so bored by that. I really like work that's big, bright and messy and bold and has like bits of paper hanging off it and is kind of representative of me, I guess. Messy and falling apart. I take that bit off.
And it's very expressive as well, your work. Compared to a cottage on a hill in watercolours. There's not a huge amount of personal stuff being expressed there, but you get there's a definite Sadie P behind the...
I do like drawing people and objects, and I can't say I've drawn a cottage in a while, but I'm not going to rule it out. Maybe when I turn 50, I'll start to draw cottages.
Only cottages.
Maybe I'll go through a cottage phase.
Is this what you wanted?
I'm doing it. Now can I be part of the art world, please? Let me into the
now
club.
Am I an insider?
Let me into your club. I've done a cottage. It's watercolour. It looks boring. Is that what you wanted?
Standing ovation from the art critics.
Finally, I'm accepted.
And is there something you wish people knew about your conditions that would make it easier for you?
Yeah, I think a big one that comes to mind for me personally, for my neurodevelopmental condition, is that if I come across as rude or don't want to talk to somebody, it's not personal. And I think what I wish is people knew is that there are things that are harder for me than they are for most other people, that things other people find really easy. And I get really burnt out by people unexpectedly coming to talk to me about things or trying to change my topic of what I'm talking about. I wish people knew that they had to pre-plan if they want to talk to me about something.
And how about if you could travel back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice? What would it be? Just one thing.
This is easy. For me, it is not to wait for mental health services to provide some sort of free therapy, but to find a private therapist that is really good, get a recommendation, and pay what is necessary, and do that earlier rather than later. But it's quite difficult to give my younger self a piece of advice, because I would be able to tell them what I know now, is that to stop wasting my time trying things that aren't made for me. Find out what works for me. Find out what I am comfortable with. Not push myself to do things that I'm not comfortable doing because I think that I should be doing it, and make myself burn out.
Yeah.
It would be to tune into that, tune into who I am, what I need much, much earlier on.
Can you go back and tell my younger self that same piece of advice as well, please?
Yeah, I guess that's quite universal, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Good for everyone, but specifically for you, yeah. And lastly, how about, can you share with our listeners a recommendation of a book or a podcast or a programme or anything that has helped you?
Yeah, I want to recommend, just because it's coming up soon, it's starting on the 15th of February, there's a season of programming on the BBC called In the Mind, exploring mental health issues. It looks great. So they've got 2 weeks exploring mental health issues, and it's kind of like a bit of a recognition about how much of a huge issue it is for our time. And I guess the bit that stands out for me is that it's revisiting Stephen Fry's Secret Life of a Manic Depressive 10 years on.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I can remember that being huge when it came out, to see that, there's this person who's really famous and he struggles with this issue, and I really related to it.
Yep. It was cutting edge at the time, really.
So there's loads going on. There's a couple of documentaries and something on the news at 10, and EastEnders has got a compelling postpartum psychosis storyline. The One Show that is doing some features, and the film Inside Out is being played, which is a really great animation about dealing with emotions.
And do you mind just reminding everyone when the Mind series is starting on the BBC?
15th of February, yeah. I feel like I'm doing an advert for the BBC, but I'm not being paid to say this. It just looks really good.
I so enjoyed chatting with you and getting to learn some more about your journey and your creative practice. And also, thank you for being our very first Mad About interviewee.
My pleasure. It's been my pleasure to be the first interviewee on the Mad About podcast.
Listening to episode 1 of the Mad About podcast. This week we talked about lockdown, we got to know my co-host Sadie P, and we fed some advice to the Means Well. We'll be sharing links to everything we talked about to our Facebook page. Just search Mad About Podcast.
In our next episode, we are totally listening.